Good afternoon again. Day 3 of Hackers Congress. Nice to see you. For someone of you, good morning. This topic that's coming up right now is very close to my heart. I've been in risk management for over 15 years now. First in traditional insurance business and then from 2010-13 in Bitcoin. And personal risk modeling and profiling is certainly a very complex thing because you can have a lot of tools that are designed for your security, but then eventually by putting all these tools together, you can still shoot yourself in the foot. And so I'm super happy to welcome Frank Rieger on stage today. He's a cryptographer, a privacy proponent, also a spokesperson for the Chaos Computer Club that organizes our beloved CCC each year. Please give a warm welcome to Frank Rieger.
Yeah, good morning. I want to talk about stuff that is not cryptography today, at least not obviously so. This thing is killing me, this light. Anyway, the reason why I think it's important to talk about how to keep your secrets despite interesting adversaries is that this is more or less what will decide if we can keep our freedoms or not. And the more we believe in cryptography, the more we believe in software-based systems, the more vulnerable we become. So just a couple of things that I did. So I'm working in practical cryptography, basically crypto for people who have a really high risk profile for more than 15 years now. And the things that I have seen in this time are developing, but there are a few important things. It's really rarely the case that the crypto is attacked. So the modern algorithms, if you have something that has been designed and implemented in the last 5 to 10 years, it's very unlikely that it will be broken. At least not before quantum computers become in reality. What is happening though is that the implementation, so that means the way that the crypto is actually built into systems, is getting attacked. And this can be on various means. So this can be the standard software exploits. This can be that the random is bad, that you are using. Key management is hard. Let's go shopping is another topic that should be on everybody's mind. And these attacks are happening. They are problematic in the sense that when they're happening, then something big breaks, like if TLS breaks again, for instance, or OpenSSL breaks again and has then a major heartbleed problem all over the place, then we are basically fucked in many pieces of infrastructure at the same time. But that's relatively rare. So especially after Snowden, a lot of the crypto implementations have been reviewed. A lot of people are looking at that stuff, and it's not that common that these breaks are happening. What is happening though is that the software infrastructure that is around it, the systems, the software, the operating systems, the applications, these are all fundamentally broken most of the time. And if the software is not broken, some idiot has configured it wrong or compiled it wrong, didn't use the mitigations against exploits that the operating system offers. So in general, we can say the software infrastructure that we're looking at today is more or less broken. So, and this leads then us to say, okay, then let's try to find a solution. So the solution is then trying to shrink the attack space by saying, okay, we build hardware tokens. That's what we call wallets or SIM cards or chip cards or all these nifty little pieces of hardware that we're discussing and carrying around, and hoping that by shrinking the attack surface, by making the software that we need to keep our secrets on them smaller, that we somehow manage to make them more secure. So this is essentially the idea that you have a piece of hardware that has a software interface that's very limited, that keeps the secrets. If you want something signed, then you have the signature created inside, or if you have need something encrypted, then it's encrypted inside. And so need to just keep this token secure. In practice, this is a good idea, but the chips that are being used are not necessarily well audited. They're often quite certified by large government institutions that have only limited clue about practical IT security. So typically it's then this, like what happened now to one of the major operating systems in the real-time space made by Wind River. They were certified to EAL6, which is basically the second highest level that you can practically achieve. And they have been carrying around, despite the certification, in major exploit for, I think, nearly 6 years. And of course, this had not been found by a certification. So when somebody tells you, okay, we're using in our wallet an ELI 5 plus or 6 certified secure element, this only means that they have somehow done their homework a little bit, but doesn't mean that's actually secure. So a lot of the chip cards also have too short key lengths. So, but anyway, it's better than nothing. But what it leads to is the mistakes that can be made are various, and they're often in the physical domain. So these were things that Dimitri did. So he put in a wireless transceiver into a Ledger wallet, and then he reverse engineered the stuff a little bit more. And I mean, this was kind of not using a secure element, but a standard run-of-the-mill microcontroller was not really the smart idea. So it was relatively trivial to exploit, but the important part was physical access. So what we have with these tokens is essentially that the physical access is required to run most of the exploits. Most of the exploits that can be run against all these wallets, smart cards, and so on, are difficult to run remotely, so need physical access. And this is good because that actually means physical access needs proximity, and it reduces the number of opportunistic attackers. So, but the problem is, once an attacker has physical access to one of these tokens, it's relatively clear that the protection envelope is probably not enough. So there are various degrees of attack, from just exploiting the bootloader, reading out the software, reading out the secret keys, to manipulating the wallet, to making all kind of attacks against the software of the wallet, like putting in hard signature into the firmware that is then for a different transaction than you actually show on the display. There are different ways of doing that. So, of course, there are still the paper and steel wallets, but they also need to be protected. And the problem is just that physical security is hard. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So in the attacks, we conveniently ignore the software-based attacks that just use the browser to attack your authentication scheme that is using in wallet. There are many ways of doing that, or they taking over of the exchange that you're putting your Bitcoin on if you're stupid. Why is physical security hard? The problem is it is in a relatively well-defined space, but it's a large one. So first thing is you need to distinguish between what you want to achieve. You want to protect against unauthorized access, somebody getting to the thing, and you want to detect if somebody does that. So that means when you, for instance, have your wallet or your protected electronics that you want to preserve, then first thing is you don't want anybody getting near it that is not authorized. And second thing, if it has happened, you really want to know. So, and one of the reasons is that, of course, your wallet is not alone. But for instance, your laptop that you're using your wallet with can be manipulated as well. So that's part of the secure envelope that you need to look at. If somebody has gotten to a laptop and just did something to it, you want to know. So this is part of the things that you need to know. The basic elements to achieve physical security is having locks, You have containers or barriers, basically safes or drawers or whatever, or access control doors. And you're having seals. Seals are basically, the holographic seals that your, for instance, your Trezor is delivered with. These are the basic elements that you have in physical security. Plus, of course, when you're in a larger organization, you're having people, that you have people watching stuff, CCTV and so on. But we're concerning ourselves here primarily with locks, seals, and containers, because this is what most of us in the practical domain will use. Currently, the problem is nearly all commercial locks that you can buy are circumventable. We're coming to the reason for that. The exceptions are locks that have been relatively recently released and are high security locks. The reason simply being that no one has yet developed exploits for them. That's about it. So that's the only reason why some physical locks are not yet insecure. All of the commercial seals that are available, with the exception of very few high-end stuff that are used in the nuclear domain, are circumventable. We're coming to that in a minute. Most affordable safes and safe locks are crap. So we're coming to that also in detail. And you need to know destructive entry is always possible. This here on the right side, it's a so-called drilling pattern that is being sold commercially. And this is basically what you put in front of your safe. And there's long tables for all safes that are on the market. And says, okay, first you drill in R2, then you drill in F, then you put your boroscope in there, and then you can see how the lock works, or you can reset the code or whatever. This is made for all safes that are on the market by commercial providers. This is, of course, destructive. But don't think that you really see that it has happened. So the way a professional burglar works is he uses one of these, these patterns, drills the holes, opens the safe, has in selection of spray paint with him, hammers a little plug into the holes that he has made, neatly polishes them off, paints them again, and you won't see it. So this is how safes are broken when the lock is not weak. But for most commercial safes, the locks are weak. So why are the locks insecure? The problem is the lock industry is not in a happy place. So they have price pressure. So nobody wants to pay like 300 or 400 euros for a lock, except a few people like us that understand that good locks are expensive. This leads to so-called good enough designs. So designs that are just good for the threat model junkie burglar from next door, but of course not against the highly resourced enemy that has access to tools and knowledge. The usability and durability of locks. Basically, the lock needs to work every damn time you want to use it. Nothing is more worse than trying to use a lock and it's jammed. And this means that on mechanic locks, they need to have tolerances. Of course, you can build a lock mechanically that has basically zero tolerances. That's basically built to the highest standard that you can machine. And this lock will be much more secure because lockpicking uses tolerances and to exploit and wiggle around the security mechanisms. But this lock will most likely jam at the first hint of dust because it has so high tolerances. So they need to balance this. So this is not trivial, actually. Then another problem is the lock industry will never tell you when a lock is insecure because that makes them liable for providing upgrades. And there's no economic way to upgrade hardware. I mean, they cannot tell you, okay, sorry, there is now an easy available Alibaba lockpicking tool for our lock, and this is why we're shipping you our new upgraded lock for free. Nobody is doing that, of course. I mean, they would be stupid. No, what they say is then they wait for somebody to actually write about it in the press and then say, yes, sorry, these bad guys have developed this new lockpicking tool, and that's why our locks are insecure. Sometimes it's not even a lockpicking tool, it's just a little hammer that you need with bumping to get in that. And then they say, yeah, too bad. You can buy the new lock at a discount. This is the most they will offer. There's in very old, very shadowy market for exploits against locks. So the king of the hill in this domain is a guy named John Falle, who's on one of the Channel Islands. And he is developing exploits and tools against locks for governments. And the business model works basically like in the cyber exploit domain. You can go there as a government saying, I want to have a toolkit for this new lock. And then John Falle says, yeah, no problem, we can do that. It will take probably 3 to 6 months to develop and build the tool. How much are you willing to pay to have exclusive access to this tool for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, or forever? And he has basically catalogs with all locks on the planet and tools for basically everything that is worthwhile picking. And this market is not going away. This market will stay stable, and you only see the trickle-down effect when one of the tools gets then copied by a cheaper vendor that gets his hands on it, and then it becomes more affordable. Another problem is, of course, lock companies trying to add electronics now. So they try to put in access control functions that are using electronics in the key. The bad thing is these people know reasonably well how to build good working, not very secure mechanical locks. They usually don't have any clue about electronics. So the first attempts of major lock companies of building electronics were in a way that in the lockpicking community, nobody took them serious because it was just laughable. So the typical exploit against these locks was a ring of magnet that you just swirl around a knob and then the lock unlocks. Or there was one lock by Arbus, which was a replacement cylinder that you put instead of your Euro cylinder. And what you needed to do is basically put in 2 needles through some plastic, reach the right point in the lock, and then just hook a battery to it, and then the lock opens. So, yeah, it's when lock industry puts in electronics, then usually it doesn't go well. So this is one thing that no, it doesn't play. Sorry. Oh, how can I make it play? It doesn't. Okay. Anyway, so you can open these safes by just bumping your lighter or a little hammer on top of it. The reason being that the element that basically locks the safe is this one. It's the so-called solenoid. It's basically a coil and a magnetic piece of steel. And when the right code is entered, this electronic puts power onto this coil, and this coil draws down this piece of steel here against a spring that you barely see here, and then you can open this thing. And if you bump it hard enough from top, or you just let it fall down, then of course the repercussion will push the steel rod down, and you can just open it. So this is how 90% of the safes below 500 euros are secured when they have an electronic lock. So when you buy a safe, or even consider buying a safe, look inside. So take a look inside and understand how the lock really works. Don't take this, it's high security because something bullshit. This is usually then bullshit. So the cheap China safes are really bad. So the best way to get a safe is get an older, expensive safe or previously expensive safe on eBay. Ah, here, now it works. That's it. So, yeah, okay. The animation was just wrong. Okay, so this is basically how it works. Hello? Now it doesn't want to stop anymore. Can you? Oh, okay. Okay. So the common attacks against electronic safe locks is use a strong magnet to pull this thing down. Then looking for holes or making holes to insert manipulation instruments. On some safes, there's conveniently the reset button for the code that you can reach from the back when you push through within some wire or something to push that button, and then you can just set a new code, open it, be done. Inserting wires to reach the actuator and then basically powered from outside within battery is also possible. When you want to go more fancy, have a more expensive lock, then you can do differential power analysis. Basically, most safes with electronic locks have bugs that make it possible to see if you have entered parts of the right code. So basically, when you push a button on a panel and it's part of the right code, the power pattern that the lock draws is different from when it's not the right number. And that means that you can easily then shortcut to the right code. Putting a data recorder that just records the keystrokes into the keypad, wait until the owner has entered the right key, then replay that. Another favorite, works all the time. And oh, that's another thing. Most of these cheap safes, especially the hotel safes, have a mechanical override lock. So you have this keypad thing, and then there's, for instance, the silver nameplate of the lock manufacturer, or the safe manufacturer. And when you removed it, then there's a very cheap, simple, easy to pick standard lock behind that overrides the whole locking mechanism. And you have that also when you go to buy cheap supermarket safes, same thing. If you have a mechanical safe, then this your adversary may use something like this. This is a dialer that gets attached to the rotary dial that dials the code, and that then tries out either all combinations or is a bit clever and tries to look for mechanical interference that makes it possible to shorten the thing. So that's called safe manipulation. It's a whole art. There are YouTube channels dedicated to that. It's worth watching them. It's very entertaining, actually. This is the mechanical version. And then there's, of course, the version where you just need to drill one hole with the pattern I showed. Basically, you drill through and then you watch the mechanics work, and then you basically have a cheat code to see what you need to dial on the outside. And then when you're done, then you put in a plug and file it down. Yeah, this is safe. Safe is depressing. Seals are also depressing. So you probably know all these little holographic seals that you have seen on all your wallets. And the problem is very few people really understand how to use seals. So what does the seal do here? The seal says, okay, this product has been packaged by somebody who had access to these seals. When you buy this product, you usually don't have access to the information how should the proper seal look like. Yeah, because it doesn't usually care in individualized serial number. The seals are perfectly placed, so that means that they are wrinkle-free. So they are not individualized in any way or form. And the problem is all these holographic seals have a weak point, and it's the adhesive towards the object you want to secure. You can heat it, you can freeze it. That also works very well because freezing makes most adhesives go brittle. And then you can basically lift off the seal without destroying it, because the way holographic seals work, when you peel them off, it has basically two layers of adhesive, so the glue. One is towards the object, and the other is between the holographic layer and the sheet that goes around it. And how they work is that the adhesive between the sheet and the holographic layer is weaker than the adhesive towards the object. So that means you peel off the outer layer, and that means that the holographic pieces and bits still stick, some of them, to the object, and you cannot really put them back together. But when you then cool down the seal, or when you heat it, or when you use some solvent to make the lower layer adhesive go weak, you can lift it off without causing the problem that the holographic stuff becomes visible. So not to bash Trezor here, the thing is, the problem is much more difficult than you think. when you want to use seals properly, you need to introduce the user, the inspector of the seal, to the way the seal should look like. The seal needs to be individualized. That means every seal should be different, and every seal should be placed differently. So because with this setup, basically the seal placed every time on the same container, on the same place, you have no idea what you're looking at. I mean, you just see, okay, there's an holographic seal, I'm feeling more secure. So that's all about it. The real big problem is, this is from the guy who did at the Argonne Laboratory, Argonne National Laboratory in the US. He worked in a group that developed seals for nuclear counterproliferation. And so this group has analyzed every fucking commercially available seal on the market. And this is what they came up with. So it's basically said, okay, we need on average basically 1.5 working days to develop a proper attack, and executing the attack takes then 1.4 minutes. Sometimes they need 2 people to do it properly, but that's the average. Some of them are way worse, very few of them are much better. And this can only be defeated by using proper process. So when you want to use seals for anything, there are 3 things that you need to remember. First is, make sure that the adhesive that you're using on the back of the seal actually works with the object you want to secure. Ledger, for instance, had the same problem, that in one series they had holographic seals over the USB port that didn't work properly well with the plastic they were using. So they basically, when you basically just looked at them the wrong way, the seal was peeling off. Yeah, and the same happens with plastics and cardboard. So then when you're having not properly tested how the seal really adheres to the underlying, then it's worthless. Second, individualized seals. That means they need serial numbers that are unique, or they need some other way of individual way that distinguishes one seal from another. This can also be that you not put the seal the same way on every object, but you wrinkle it, you make it not a straight angle, whatever. And the third is, the user, the inspector, needs the information how to identify that this is the right seal. So he needs the serial number, needs to know if it has wrinkles, basically get a photo from how the seal should look like, the individualized seal, before looking at and inspecting the seal. Otherwise, it's just decoration. For safes, we can actually learn something from the United States government. The United States government has a very interesting organization. It's called the General Security Administration, which I still find a very fascinating name for a government office. And they rate safes. So safes have a so-called GSA class. The only relevant class for our means is class 5. And what it says is, okay, this safe protects against 20 man-hours of standardized semi-smart worker for entry into the safe without leaving a trace, and so on. So this basically, or forcing your way into or figure out the lock code. My favorite is the radiological attack that works against mechanical locks, which is actually a practical attack where you use an X-ray machine to figure out how the wheels in safe lock are oriented, and you're basically having the cheat look through the wall thing with an X-ray machine to look at the, and how they achieve 20 man-hours against radiological attack. Very simple, they put a lead foil around the lock. So that's so what we learn here is that the right way to think about physical security is that you delay your attacker. You can never prohibit a determined attacker from achieving its goal if he has infinite time. So, and that means that everything that you plan is that you need to delay an attacker long enough that he will get caught. If you look at how governments secure their secrets, they always have multiple layers, barriers, and so on. And then they have people who shorten or basically react in time once there's something happening. This can be your alarm system going off and you will be then there 15 minutes later. This can be your friend reacting to the alarm, whatever. So, but this is what you need to keep in mind. So how long will it take for something or somebody to react to an alarm? And is your time that the attacker is delayed adequately long enough for this time frame to be enough for the reaction? So these layers need to be added to each other and hopefully not cancel each other out. And the thing is, if the attacker knows before what to expect, then his time frame will be shorter. So this is the one ugly truth we all have learned from cryptography, and this is deeply ingrained, and this is harmful for us in this field, that security by obscurity is bad. So in cryptography, we know security by obscurity, not knowing what's going on, is a bad thing, because this usually means there's a backdoor, there's something hidden, somebody has not reviewed the code, and so on. In physical security, security by obscurity is actually the only real advantage that you have towards an attacker. That means if the attacker doesn't know what to expect, what alarm system you use, what safe you have, what lock you have, what surprises you have built in there, then it's more difficult for him to calculate. So the important points. Never let anyone have possession of your keys, because they can be photographed, they can be imprinted, they can be decoded. Never have pictures of your keys taken, so people showing their new fancy key that they have for their home door on Facebook still happens. It's just one behind putting your credit card on Instagram. There's one important thing. Attackers can defeat individual layers of your security with time in between. For instance, when you want to crack a lock that's on an outer door, what you can do is use a decoding technique that decodes what key you need for the lock in multiple passes. That means you walk by, stick in your tool, wiggle it, take it out, walk. A couple days later, you do the same and the same and the same, and you iterate until you have the key decoded. This works also, for instance, with self-impressioning, which is a technique that basically decodes the key on the lock. That means you need to plan for the attacker not just going through in one pass. This happens as well, but individual layers can be defeated individually when you not plan for that. Yeah, never brag about the details, never ever. So you can discuss things with your friends, but never tell them what you actually do in detail. That's really important thing. When you need to have contractors like building indoors, building alarm systems, so don't use the same contractor for everything, compartmentalize. That's also what the governments do. Make sure that your contractors don't know what the other has been doing as much as possible. Sometimes it's not possible, but if you can do it, try that. Quite often, code-based access stuff, even entering your passphrase for your wallet or whatever, can be defeated by cameras or even microphones. So this is something that you need to consider. So checking your place for cameras or microphones is something that you should do from time to time if you're not sure that you had perfect physical security to that place. When you're using commercial logs, and you will need to use commercial logs, keep up to date on what the attacks for them look like. There are many, especially YouTube channels. One of my favorites is a lockpicking lawyer that basically make a sport of picking and defeating modern locks. And you want to keep up with what the actual attack time for the locks that you're using is. This also means that you need to budget and plan for swapping out products. When you know, okay, this product has been reasonably secure against the attackers I need to play against, but now this damn lawyer has come up with a technique that just needs one pick and something, and then your lock is basically open in 30 seconds, then you need to swap it out. I mean, there's no way around it, because it's worse than basically the construction market lock that you need 1 minute 30 to pick. So this is, you need to keep updated. And then budget also for swapping out. So how do you build an adequate physical security? So you should combine good commercial products with unknowns, with surprises, with stuff that you build yourself, with alarm systems that are non-standard, with detectors for things that the enemy probably doesn't know about or doesn't care about, or has no idea. So one simple thing is, for instance, if you have a really good humidity detector in a room that's usually not used and that has very little people walking in, basically a safe room, a humidity detector is nearly undefeatable for an attacker because he sweats. Means if somebody walks into that room, the humidity will go up. So, and this is one of the surprises that you could put in. There are tons of sensors that you can hook up to an Arduino, write a bit of software, install it, tell no one what you actually did, and think about what all these sensors you can buy cheaply can do for you to detect the presence of people who shouldn't be there. Layer defenses, I said already, so have 2 doors before your safe, not just one. Make sure there's an alarm system, at least in the space in between or directly at the safe. So make it creative, essentially. Also be very clear about your goals. So what you can achieve in terms of delaying your attacker, detecting an attack, making sure that you're not lying into your pocket what you can actually achieve. I mean, we have seen this many times that people had these big fancy underground bunkers and had tons of security, and then they were telling everybody who was visiting them what the type of security was they had. And of course, then when they get raided, then it was just an act of 5 minutes to defeat their security because the attacker knew what to expect. So when you discuss ideas with other people, that's good because you're getting feedback, but never discuss what you actually implement specifically, because word travels, you don't know if people are really trustworthy. Rely on yourself in this. Yeah. Process is another thing. Don't be stupid about what you can achieve just with physical security barriers, but use multiple places, split your secrets, make sure that you're not having everything in one place, that you're losing everything when you're having one barrier breached. So attacker motivation is an important topic. Be sure that you know against whom you're playing. So when you're just playing against people who just want to steal your money, they usually use their resources relatively rational. So they want money, so they spend money. And if it takes too long, then it's too much money spent and too much resources wasted. When you have ideological or non-financially motivated attackers like governments, they may spend resources irrationally. So they may just, because they want your secrets, they just may spend a couple $100,000 on something that's just worth $5,000 because they want it. This is really important. Be clear about what you expect to be your attackers, because depending on what game you play, you only notice as you, your attacker motivation varies. Yeah, and the last thing that you need to keep in mind is that the human brain is a stationary target. Everything that you do to prevent your money being stolen or your authentication schemes not being circumvented, when you want to do something, if an attacker manages to manipulate you into wanting something, then everything you do, technically or physical security or whatever, is null and void. And this is so not being stupid and trying to figure out before if something that you want is actually a good idea. And if you want to send somebody money, if this is really what you want to do, is a good thing. Thank you for your attention. I think we have time for questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Frank. You basically summed up my concerns with using Shamir secret sharing to split the keys, but I think there will be a lot of questions today, so I'll just pass on the mic.
Thank you, Frank. Very informative and entertaining talk. As you're talking to the crypto audience here, I mean, you mentioned Ledger, you mentioned Trezor, and you showed real physical safes, and all of them are not fully safe, obviously. Nevertheless, that's the options we have. What's your recommendation? Would you say, well, create a paper wallet, put it in one of the used safes you buy on eBay, or use one of the things we have, which are the small USB devices?
I think that use all the tools you can get. So, and So for instance, one good option if you want to have long-term storage, like basically having long-term holding that you want to secure, a good option is basically having not one but two safes, and then split up your basically your BIP wallet, if it's paper or steel or whatever, into two or into three shards, and put them into different safes so that an attacker at least has two places that he needs or three places that he needs to get into, and tell no one where these places are except for the people you want to inherit the stuff to. So this is for long-term stuff. So for shorter-term stuff, the wallets are of course good because they reduce the attack surface, and reducing attack surface is always good. But you should know that, I mean, we have seen this iteration of wallets, both on Trezor and on Ledger and the smaller ones. They have learned a lot, and they have still not come to the point where I would say, okay, this is a good solution, because the secure elements that are in the wallets, are still not top of the line because they are hard to get. That's another problem. So the secure element chip cards that you can get as a wallet manufacturer, you only get under NDA. They're hard to review. It's really difficult to actually figure out what the real security margin is. So assume for every wallet that you have, once an attacker has it in its hands, he can extract the secrets. So this must be the assumption that you have. So it will be progressively harder the better the wallets get. But in determined attacker, let's say if you have 10 million on this wallet, a determined attacker will use this all technology available, and that means going to some shadowy laboratory that is normally used to extract pay TV secret keys from chip cards, and say, okay, I want a secret key from this wallet, and then they will extract it with electron microscopy or with flash remnants or whatever. So there's a lot of techniques that you can use. Intelligence agencies may do this as well of the secrets that you're protecting there. So assume if a wallet is physically lost, then its security margin may shrink depending on type of attacker. So that means protect it as well. And everything that splits it up basically makes sure that an attacker needs to attack more than one place is good. And so getting GSR class 5 safes on eBay or something similar on the European nomenclature, which is a little bit more complex, which is why I skipped it here, is a good idea. And then augment the safe and the surrounding with surprises, with electronics that you put in there that nobody really expects them to be there, and then make sure that it's placed in a place where you have reaction time. So basically, if somebody is around, or that you can travel there and quickly, essentially. Yeah.
Frank, may I add to the question? The paper, when you do shards and split in different locations, never tells you if it has been compromised. So yes, we can layer protection, but what's the point of layering protection if you cannot tell that someone has been working months and maybe years on just going in, copying, closing, and then patiently waiting? Because we have seen, especially in Bitcoin, attackers that plan 9-12 months ahead. Yeah. And the risk will be only increasing for Bitcoiners.
The bigger the holding, the bigger your risk. Yeah, that's true.
Okay, I have a question. When you were talking about the safes and about the physical security they're using, my question is, why would we use anything as simple as this electromagnets or something like that, when I would say there would be much safer techniques through, for example, molecular physics or chemistry that I could think could be much more safer on the like physical level. But why are we still using anything as simple as electromagnets?
Price. Yeah, so I mean, if you look at high-end safes that are built today, you find all kinds of interesting techniques to make sure that they are really hard to manipulate from the outside. So standard techniques that have been around for dozens of years is something like, there's a plate in the safe door that's made of brittle glass. So when you drill through the plate, then the glass breaks and then bolts shoot out to all sides of the door, which makes the safe basically a wreck. You only can open it in a couple of hours as an angle grinder. And there are many more techniques that you could use. So, but this is what I mean with surprises, with creativity, with things that are not standard, that basically cannot be distinguished from your Amazon buying history, what you probably have in surprises. And so be creative and develop these methods. That's the way to go there. So when you have interesting molecular physics ideas, that's good. So please do that.
Further questions? Your last chance. Yes, coming.
Is a share secret way how to protect our secret? For example, I split the secret on 3 pieces, and if one is compromised, I even have to save my seed. What's your opinion?
Yeah, I mean the secret sharing methods are, of course, on the cryptographic side the way forward, but still you need to somehow protect the individual pieces somehow, and so the way I think technology will develop is that you in the end have a multi-person setup. So when you're having like large holdings to protect, that you set it up in a way that the access credentials to these holdings are split in a way that multiple people can hold the individual pieces and the people that you trust, and that only you plus somebody else or you plus 2 people or something like that can actually then access the credentials. This is more or less a social setup. I mean, this is essentially building trust networks that you can then use to protect your system or your holdings. And this is also how it works in real life. I mean, essentially, this is the having a community of people that watches out for each other is actually the only way how to long-term secure stuff. So it's technology can only help there. So you alone will not be able to actually protect your secrets forever. You need other people at least to react to an alarm when your system triggers an alarm, or people you trust to keep a part of your shared secrets that or secret splittings that you need to put somewhere. And so it works only by cleverly combining the cryptographic properties that we have in systems like secret sharing or secret splitting, plus properly designed physical security. So it's neither part alone will solve the problem.
How many such people do you need in your life to protect your split secret?
That very much depends on what your secret is.
Let's say the private key.
Yeah, I mean, 3 is usually enough. I mean, 5 is better, but then it can get. I mean, it's a complexity problem in the end. So, how many people you have that you really trust, and that and how do you set up the split in a way that they cannot work against you even if they combine. So, and how many friends you have that that you're reasonably sure that they really don't like each other, so that they don't conspire against you.
And also, how many of those do you have long term? So until,
Right.
you know, 2, 3, 4 decades ahead. And also my other question would be like when you set up some sharing of the secret now, and it's a pretty early technology, what can be expected, you know, the backward compatibility in 30 or 50 years down the road?
Yeah, that is of course an interesting question. So, I mean, if it's really long term, I actually would stick to using a steel wallet and splitting it up into multiple pieces, and thinking about a way how to split your secret in a way that you don't need people actually for that, but only need the people, for instance, put a safe at a friend's place. So that's a good technique, basically having a safe that's reasonably secure, and you do something like a safe swap exchange with your friends, saying, okay, you can put a small safe in my basement, I put a small safe in your basement, and each has then split secrets in there, and you, as long as you trust each other, it's fine, because you have basically shared leverage against each other. Yeah, this is a good way how to build such a system.
Do you have any thoughts about the open hardware? This is a different subject, but Yesterday, there was a talk about, the idea of making your computer trustworthy. So, backdoor proofing your computer by openness and making open hardware stuff. So I'm thinking if there are any parallels, if this is to be done, there will be some parallels from the safe industry and the open hardware industry, right? Because, for example, the idea of encrypting RAM, it's nice, but how do you do this? You have to have an hardware that encrypts the RAM inside your computer, right? Or
So the idea of open source locks has been around for some time. Realistically, you can only build electronic locks as open hardware because and you need to use commercial actuators. So there are safe actuators that are using spindle motors or that are using ultrasonic drives that are safe, that you cannot easily manipulate from the outside. But the problem is that building open source mechanics, so like the idea of building, for instance, an open source Eurocylinder lock is technically not really possible because the development effort is too high and it's too specialized. You really need to know what you're doing. You're having very long test cycles and you need commercial tooling for that. So that means if the projects that I know of that building open source locks are using commercial actuators plus in the electronic that they built themselves. If you want to look at really good locks, so locks that you could basically copy ideas from, there's only one series of locks that is approved by the US government for storing top secret and above, and that's Kaba Mars, the XO series. So that's the latest iteration is the X10 from that series. And so basically XO7, XO8, XO9, X10 is the series. And these are locks that don't have keypads, but in dial. And the dial powers in dynamo, and the dynamo then spins up the electronics, so it doesn't need batteries. That means that there's no point to attach clamps to batteries. And the everything is on the inside of the safe. The only thing that's on the outside of the safe is a very small display, which is just an LCD display. And that's then optically decoupled to the outside. And so these are locks that if you aspire to build a proper open source lock, look at the Kaba Mars XO series. You can get them usually on eBay for a couple $100. This is also what I would recommend when you want to put a good lock in your safe, then use one of those. Beware that the mechanics of these locks, so they have a backdoor, but the backdoor is not in the lock, but in they're coming with basically the thing where the bolt slides in is made of brittle metal. So they're built for doors, and you think, okay, this is all looking nice and sturdy, and then you put it in, and you want, okay, what do they do if they want to get into this door in one of their own facilities? It's very simple. They just physically break the thing where the bolt slides in because it's very brittle, and they are individualized, laser engraved, and so each set comes with that, and then they inspect if the laser engravement still matches. So that means you can use the lock, but don't use the supporting hardware because that should have one of those things then milled in from proper V2A steel.
I think we have maybe 1 or 2 minutes for the last questions. Do we? Yes.
Okay, let's make it quick. So apparently it's very hard to do this. So would you recommend to outsource this, like use a safety deposit box? Would it be better for most people than just try to do this on your own?
That very much depends on who your adversary is. If your adversary is the government, then certainly don't, at least not within bank deposit box. So then I would rather use private enterprises that offer these services off the books and that are not widely known, so that you have also the factor of that your government adversary doesn't know where your stuff is. So basically standard bank deposit boxes have secondary keys, and the secondary keys are routinely used to access that stuff. So it's except in very few Swiss private banking houses that don't have a secondary key for your safe deposit box, but they can still pry it open if the government requests it. So in general, doing it yourself by splitting it up, spreading it to friends, using reasonably secure safes is the better option than using a commercial security safe deposit box provider, because Okay, if your adversary is not the government but just ordinary criminals, then bank safe depository box may be a good option.
Okay, I think our time is unfortunately over. Thank you very much, Frank.